For folks who don't know, the Free State Project is a movement of voluntary human action where we are trying to concentrate libertarians in the state of New Hampshire.
I think we've done more in the last decade than every other libertarian movement combined has accomplished in the last 5 decades.
Are my friends and my neighbors who are willing to stand against tyranny, make their voices heard, and have a goddamn impact.
We have a problem where too many people are afraid to say what they believe in, let alone actually do something about it. If you're afraid to stand outside the TSA line and piss off 97% of people who are waiting to just take the arm builder up their ass in 5 seconds, then you're probably not ever going to make the change.
Free State Project, again, it's 1% of the Free State movement.
I am a friend of the Free State Project.
And would you encourage people to check it out?
Absolutely. Check it out. Find out. If you like it, join and continue the effort.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, libertarians, anarchists, activists, and people of the internet, movers, natives, and those on your way, thanks for joining another episode of Free State Live, where you get to hear about all the ways you can live free or die in the free state of New Hampshire. First and foremost, it's time to welcome back your hosts. I'm Justin O'Donnell, former Libertarian candidate for U.S. Senate, and host of the O'Donnell for Liberty podcast. Joining me, as always, activist and author Carla Garrick, President Emeritus and current board member of the Free State Project. How are you, Carla?
Hey.
And CEO of Library and fellow board member of the Free State Project, Jeremy Kaufman. How are you, Jeremy?
Great to see you, as always.
And joining us this week, representing the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, we have Jeff and Mellissa Creem. How are you guys?
Good,
Hi.
great. Thanks for having us.
Good.
Now, have you guys ever been curious, those of you watching, how the Liberty sausage is made? Curious about how libertarians can keep up and keep government in check in the age where government is doing everything it can to grow and hold you back. Jeff and Mellissa are the people in the weeds every day, making sure that New Hampshire stays the freest state in the country. And they're here tonight to tell us how they do it and why it's important and how you can help them do it. But first, we have on topic our weekly update. This week's weekly update starts with good news. The folks over at the Cato Institute released their 2021 Freedom Rankings over at freedomin50states.org. And it was no surprise to those of us in the Free State what the end result was. But let's go down the list of categories and see where New Hampshire stacks up. Fiscal policy, number 3. Regulatory policy, number 24. Personal freedom, number 2. Economic freedom, number 3. Litigation freedom, number 1. Land usage freedom, number 40. Marriage freedom, number 28. Education freedom, number 5. Occupational freedom, number 7. Victimless crime rating, number 7. Health insurance freedom, number 19. Labor freedom, number 27. Alcohol freedom, number 37. Asset forfeiture, number 4. Gambling freedom, number 41. Tobacco freedom, number 21. Firearms freedom, number 2. Cannabis freedom, number 14. Telecom deregulation, number 20. Incarceration rate, number 9. Travel freedom, number 8. Campaign finance, number 45. While these rankings clearly show room for improvement in New Hampshire in relation to other states, the key takeaway is that all things considered, New Hampshire once again reclaims its title as the overall freest state in the country. A lot of the work done to reclaim this title of freest state from our warm cousins in Florida was due to the diligent work of the Free State Project movers and participants in lobbying, legislating, and making a difference in their communities. And of course, that has Twitter mad. Jeff and Mellissa, you guys are the ones in the weeds. You're the free staters ruining New Hampshire by keeping us free, according to Twitter. All of those points, like what I take away when I read over the report from Cato and everything that they said about New Hampshire being the freest state in the country, was we led the country in so few categories. It's just overall we're the freest. You guys are the ones doing the work to catch up in those other categories.
Yeah, basically, we're reviewing the legislation that's going through the State House, and we're deciding whether it's pro-liberty or anti-liberty, and we're letting our legislators know if they want liberty, how to vote. It's that simple, and then we keep them accountable. We keep the scorecard.
Actually, Could you guys maybe just for folks who are new, we have so many people who are moving and so many people who are curious about it. We tend to all know what we're talking about. Just give us a quick rundown. What is the NHLA? What is it historically? Where does it come from? What does it do?
Okay, so the NHLA started in 2003. It stands for the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance. And it's this organization that's, we're a tiny group of people really we watch the State House. And so the way we watch the State House is we get all of the bills that are proposed in the fall of the year. So right now, they've actually released the bills that are going to go through our State House this January. And so now this group of people is going to review all of those bills. And we have a whole system in place. They go through, it's a little checklist system. And those bills come up and we rate them for how important they are to the state of New Hampshire. They get ranked, and if they're important enough, they end up on this thing called the gold standard. I have, here's a copy of one right here, this little piece of paper, and the bill is there, and we have rated it on whether it's pro-liberty or anti-liberty. And if it's a pro-liberty bill, we're telling them vote for it, our legislators. And if it's anti-liberty, we're saying vote against it. And so this gold standard gets emailed to all of them, and it gets handed out to them by, again, some volunteers. Every time when the votes are coming up, when these bills are to be voted on, those legislators have this sheet to know how they should vote if they want to vote with liberty. And then once they vote, we watch how did they vote. Did they vote with liberty or did they vote against liberty? And at the end, we are scoring them to see how they did. And if they are pro-liberty, they're going to get an endorsement from the NHLA. And if they are anti-liberty, we're going to call them a constitutional threat.
Yeah, I love constitutional threat because that's what my opponent is. Old Lou D'Alessandro not only takes the most money from Pfizer, he also, is the only CT, I believe, which stands for constitutional threat in the Senate. So no doubt we'll have a few more before we get all the great senators in there. But yeah, and that gold standard goes, someone's literally putting the paper in legislators' hands as they walk in.
Every week, yeah.
And it's probably also worth mentioning it's an all volunteer organization. So although we raise money to do things like pay for the operations of running the website and printing the materials, and for doing endorsement checks, everyone who's doing the work behind the scenes are all volunteers. So we're probably the only people in the state who get paid less than our state reps.
To read their bills.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely one of the best organizations to support. I frequently say that the NHLA is sort of one of the secrets to New Hampshire's success. The work that they have been doing, it really, especially in New Hampshire, but I think this is true in a lot of places, like legislators aren't always the most informed. They're not always the most philosophical. And so you've got this organization that's trusted by so many people that's going through and diligently reviewing the bills and saying, hey, this is the liberty position. And there's no question that the NHLA is moving the votes of representatives and also changing the way that bills are created because people understand what the NHLA will or will not endorse. And so it shifts even the submission of bills, I think, to be in a more pro-liberty perspective. And the amount of data, it's really incredible. You can go onto the NHLA website and they have ratings of every state rep going back how many years? It's like 15 years, 20 years. How many years does the data go back?
However long ago, 2000, don't make me do live math.
2003.
So.
18 years ago. This is 2021. So 2003, that's 18 years.
Yeah. So you can go through and look at this. You can look at every position they've taken on every bill, how every state rep has voted. And, the Free State Project sometimes talks about, there's, 100 libertarians in the state house or various numbers around here. And when we say that, we're going off of the NHLA, where the NHLA. How many reps got an A grade or got a high grade in the
We had
last?
74 A+ reps this year. That's
A+.
Oh wow, A+.
Yeah.
74 A+.
And 121 A or higher, and 150 A- or higher, and 175 B+ or higher.
And so this is what, when we say that there are this many libertarians, this means so they're voting the libertarian way, about 90% of the time. If you're voting libertarian 90% of the time, I think it's like pretty fair to call that person a libertarian, right? And so this is the data that kind of proves it, because sometimes you'll have these skeptics who say, oh, these reps, they're not libertarians, they're just Republicans. They're not, I mean, they are Republicans, but there's occasionally some Democrats. They're mostly Republicans. But it really makes the argument that people are voting libertarian, it makes it unquestionable, in my opinion, because you can go through and you can look at every bill and every grade. And the NHLA, it's not some fake liberty organization that uses liberty to back the state. I mean, this is unequivocally, the libertarian principled position on issues, even when it might even be unpopular to do that. The NHLA always takes the principled stance and always grades people the principled way. And so, anyone out there who's questioning, oh, how are these people actually libertarians, or are they just Republicans who like to use the word liberty? You can go and look. You can go and look at every bill and every vote and every grade. And I think it makes it, pretty unquestionable that people are voting libertarian here.
Well, the NHLA is, the key word they love is transparent, right? The NHLA is transparent. The bill is there, our review is there, how they voted is there, and our justification for why it's liberty or anti-liberty is there. So it's very transparent, and I do, and I think it does. It comes down to principles, and it is a very principled organization, principled in liberty first, liberty all the time.
Yeah, it's probably fair to say, because obviously we've had a few times we've had libertarians actually who are elected, and we see how they vote and stuff. And I would say, it's actually kind of fun to watch friends fight sometimes online, right? They'll be talking about how you're not really a libertarian, and I'm like, well, you guys voted exactly the same, except for the votes that you missed, right? So I'm not sure exactly what you're arguing over, right? So it's interesting to watch, and I think. People sometimes, you'll see online, people will talk about how many libertarians, capital L libertarians are elected. And, I'm pretty sure if we had, 200 capital L libertarians, there'd be some getting A+ and some getting A's and some getting A-, right? I think if we look across, the broader liberty community, and, we see that, there's not always 100% agreement. And so it's not maybe it'd be better, maybe not, but it's not like if we had, 200 capital L libertarians that it would be 200 A+. That's for sure.
But I would say, speaking to some of this is at least the NHLA can point the way to liberty, even if people don't always see it, right? So the NHLA to me is directionally pointing where liberty is, and then they can see where to go. What does liberty mean? And we're pointing that direction, and then they can vote with us. I don't know. Yeah.
And, of course, also here in New Hampshire, the GOP platform is very pro-liberty as compared to other platforms. And that may or may not be because Free Staters worked on the platform to rewrite it in the past 10 years. So, our little fingers are in all the little pies, which of course is what causes all the re-eating.
That is another really funny one, because when people say that the libertarians have, that they're some people will attack some of the liberty Republicans and say, well, they're not real Republicans or whatever. But what's the organization? You guys would know, Jeff. One of Jeff and Melissa will know. There's an organization.
House Republican Alliance, basically.
House Republican Alliance. So there's an organization that also does what New Hampshire Liberty Alliance does, but they grade you as to whether you met the Republican platform standard. And the Free Staters score very highly on these ratings, and that's because Free Staters also wrote the Republican platform, so you can go on and read the New Hampshire Republican platform. And look, I've read it. I'm not going to say it's 100% libertarian, but it's 80 to 90% of the way there. And it's so close to there that the libertarians actually score higher than the non-libertarian Republicans.
I'll say it's interesting. When we were watching the Cato rankings, this is, sometimes people online will talk about all the work that's still to do in New Hampshire. And I get, the 1s and 2s are exciting, but I get excited when I see those 12s and 20s. I'm like, ooh, there's work we can do. I want to dig my teeth in there. So I don't see any of those things, whether it's a platform that's not perfect or a ranking that's low. I think that's exciting and gives us something to go do.
Yeah, and I think that, sorry, Jeremy, I think that's really important, because people forget. I mean, my number one peeve, I'm over people complaining about the weather. If you can't buy a jacket to live your values, go to Mars, but where it's colder. But, this just has so many opportunities. So the people complain online, right? And they'll say, oh, what about this? Or, hey, make this perfect and then I'll come, right? And I'm like, two things. That is a red flag to me at this stage that, you're not a doer. You're not someone who actively wants to come and build the best future that all of us can imagine, right? And I agree. I was looking at some of those numbers. I actually wrote down number 45, campaign finance ? And I was like, oh, we got to go look at what that is. And what's going on there. Of course, I'm not always great on my reporting. So maybe it's one of those that we just let slide and we just go for term limits instead to, weed out the problems before they start by just saying everyone just gets a couple of bets at whatever the saying is. Thank you. But can you guys maybe tell us a little bit about what is that process? We talked about sort of sausage making, right? So you start with you train people, or what does the process look like?
So we do bill review training. So we have a whole system as part of our website. Is it part of the website? It's part of the website. And you go into, so once you've been trained to do bill reviews, and it's not difficult, but we prefer to take you through because there are some tricky things to bills. So we have bill review trainings. I think we've done 3 this year so far, and we meet in different places around the state. And we take you through, and it's basically a program. And so you read the bill, and here you go. So, well, this isn't the
that's the dashboard.
This is the dashboard.
That shows the leaderboard, how many bills each person's reviewed, what percentage of bills are reviewed and not reviewed. So actually, this is great this year. I'm really excited because you'll see so there's me, Jay Creem, down at number 2. I'm always number 1, and this year I'm quite excited to be number 2. We've got a new active volunteer, which means I can, when he's doing that, it means I can be doing some other things, some other surprise stuff we're working on for this year behind the scenes. And so
wow, he has a handle that's not, he or she has a handle that's not their name. So I don't want to potentially ruin anonymity, but I got to figure out who that person is because I didn't realize someone had come in and was crushing it that much.
Yeah, and I was, so what's really interesting to watch too is that some people can do bill reviews quickly, and some people can do them well, and a few people can do them quickly and well. So he's doing good reviews, and in the first 10 reviews, there's a process where we, reviewers come in, they review bills, and we have a master reviewer double checks their work. And I started seeing getting the hard bill reviews and getting them right and seeing the issues. I was like, oh, this is going to be good. So.
And he's passionate. I'll tell you, it's a he. And he is very passionate, and he is all in. And he has friends in California who he's like, they have to get here. They love this stuff. They're going to love it as much as me. And so his energy and enthusiasm is contagious. And I think he'll do a lot for the NHLA, be above and beyond bill review. Just his energy and his willing to spread the word and get others on board.
Well, I think we have a relevant question on that, getting others on board here. Artemia on YouTube asks, do you need to be a signer to volunteer for NHLA? Is it done remotely, or are there meetings where the work is done? And are there discussions and debates over bills or votes within NHLA on them?
Wow, so much in there. So you don't need to be a signer with the Free State Project. I'm going to tell you a little secret. We're not Free Staters.
You are now. You are now Free Staters. Yeah.
We're not. We are pre-staters. We were here. We definitely support the Free State Project. So no, you don't need to be a signer. I forget the rest of it. There was so much in that question. Is there online meetings? We don't really do online meetings. There is a forum on the website.
How can someone get involved from out of state?
Right. So actually, probably the best thing to do would be to email research@nhliberty.org and say, hey, I'd love to get involved in doing bill reviews. We do have there's an online YouTube video that tells you how to do it. It's probably almost easier. There's a PowerPoint we can actually send you So we'd be willing to work with somebody if they wanted to get involved from out of state. Go ahead, read through the slides. If you want to watch the video, you can watch the video. You want to talk to us, go through some questions, and there's really like no risk to getting it wrong, right? Because if someone is a liberty troll or something and wants to review bills the opposite way, they won't get out. So we're absolutely willing to work with people from out of state. The first most important thing, you don't have to be a signer, but you do have to be a member of the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, which sounds like bad, but it's actually pretty good, right? So there's a couple different levels of membership, and the one we call the activist level of membership is free. And so the idea behind calling it the activist level is, it's free, but that's because we expect that you're going to be doing something. So you can either become a paying member or become an activist member.
And paying member is $25 for the year.
Yeah.
And I realize we're in hard financial times for many people, but $25 for an entire year of membership is pretty decent.
I also highly recommend the lifetime membership. I think the price went up a little bit, but it's still very affordable. What's that running right now?
$500.
Is it?
Okay.
And I mean, that's going to be worth like $2,000 by next year. So, get it now while it's cheap.
We're going to reprice it in Bitcoin. So.
Oh, thank you, Katie. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So actually, one of the bill review training sessions we did, I think the most recent one was at the Shell out in the Seacoast. So that's actually one of the great things. We've done them. We do them at restaurants. We do them at bars. We actually did one at Fun Spot, and one of the recent ones was the
Sky Venture in Nashua.
Sky Venture in Nashua, the indoor skiing and surfing place, and then the Shell out in the Seacoast. So we try to basically go around the state, and the real purpose of the live training is to kind of get people excited and engaged. Like I said, you can do this from the comfort of your home. Actually, we said we have meetings, so we don't do training meetings online, but our board meetings, we do generally have a open Zoom link. Yep. So if you wanted to kind of like see what the board looks like, that's really the sausage going on behind the scenes. That's certainly something people can do as well.
Next one is January 9th is our next board meeting, and there's a Zoom link is already on the calendar. You're welcome. So you can join and let me know you're going to come because I have to let you in.
One small comment I wanted to make was all of the ratings that Justin reviewed from Cato. That was a date ending at the end of 2019. So that went through December 31st, 2019. 2020 was one of the best years in Free State Project history. You guys would know better than I'm tempted to say it's the best year, but I've only been here for like 6 or 7 years, so I don't know. If you guys want to contradict me, I would accept your statement to say there was a better year in history, but it's got to be up there as one of the best years. This is even in the Cato write-up. It says this doesn't include 2020, which may make it impossible for another state to catch New Hampshire. Like an incredible school choice bill wasn't included in the education ratings. We had government ban on government vaccine passports. We cut taxes further. We cut red tape further. We cut all of these things further. And so I did just want to mention that. It's not relevant to what we're talking about, but just that is an important fact of these ratings. Is 2020 was one of the best years in Free State Project history. 2021 is going to be incredible as well. And none of that is factored into the rating. So just so people know, there's a bunch of incredible things that happened in the last 18 months, and none of that was in the scores.
Yeah, one of the specific lines in the Cato write-up at the end of its explanation of how New Hampshire became number one again, they said New Hampshire held a distinguished lead for such a long period of time, and then slowly over time, Florida caught up and passed. And then New Hampshire just grabbed it back, but we didn't include anything that happened in 2020 or 2021 or the response to the economic crisis of COVID or the response to the lockdowns of COVID. And they theorized that it'll be impossible for another state to ever catch New Hampshire at number one.
We can't rest.
No, absolutely not.
No rest. We go as far as we can, and we don't stop. I don't care what they say. It doesn't matter. We have to keep pushing for freedom. That's it. No, that's fine. We're not giving up.
Oh, I love it. And one of the reasons that we're winning so much is, the word something that Free State Project talks about sometimes is this concept of like micro-liberties, not just the taxes, but all these smaller things that aren't on the top of your mind, but they still add up and they're important. And that could be something like it's really easy to start a beer brewing business and to start selling beer in New Hampshire, or things like legalizing the tinting of windows, which was something that actually for like 5 years, people would be in our replies, because people will latch on to whatever their issues, like, well, I can't tint my windows in New Hampshire. And so Free Staters fixed that. And now, in 2020, they passed a bill. You can do aftermarket window tinting, on your cars. Previously, you could only do it on your windshield. You couldn't do it on the passenger, on the side windows. Now you can do it on the side windows. And like the list of issues like this, it just goes on and on and on. And it's because of like this really dense community of people where, if there's something that you care about, it doesn't matter how small it is. You can care about raw milk or like whatever your thing is, you can come, you can. It's so easy to find a legislator who will work with you, even if you don't get elected yourself, who will say, hey, you care about that? Let's work together on a bill. The bill gets submitted. The NHLA says this is a good bill. And then a bunch of people back the bill. And so, even if there's an area where, hey, we're maybe middle of the pack, if that's, or there's some small thing, some area that you are passionate about, it's so easy to make it's so feasible. I'm not gonna say it's easy, but it's so feasible to make a difference and to make an impact and to change that yourself. Literally one person can come and say, I care about this. We need to change this law. And there will be hundreds of people who will support you in making that happen.
Well, as you know, we have these meetups all over the state, right? And so Jeff and I also do Nashville Liberty on Sunday nights. It's this meetup. I mean, once a week we're meeting up, and we have several state reps that come to this meetup. And so they'll be at the meetup, there'll be new people there, and we're like, oh, here's Andy, he's a state rep. Wait, what? I'm meeting a state rep? Yeah, you are. And oh, here's Tony, he's a state rep. Wait, what?
And then Julius just walked in.
And then Julius, oh, here's Julius. I mean, so it is very easy in this state to actually meet and know and talk to your state rep face to face, because to their credit, they are getting out there, they are going to these meetups, and they are meeting their constituents. And then, you can talk to them about, my daycare just changed the diaper rule. Well, that's because there was a change in the law. Oh, wait, what? We need to have a discussion about that? Oh, yeah, let me write a bill. And they're on it. It's just, it's great. Yeah.
Now, we do have a specific question here that I do want you guys to address. And I think it's a great question because, hold on, I'm going to prep it to bring it up, but Trading with Will asks, can you summarize high level what would be okay in a preferred bill? Like, how is it funded, regulated? Like, what are the lines drawn between a pro-liberty bill and an anti-liberty bill on some of the middle ground or more moderate issues?
So you would really want to go through the bill review training. So there's several questions when you're in the bill review program. And so number one asks, I'm not going to get them in order, but one will ask, what's the financial impact to New Hampshire? Is this a big financial impact bill, or is this going to be a small financial impact bill? Another question will ask, well, how many people will this bill affect? Is it going to affect all of New Hampshire or a small group in New Hampshire? Another question on there is does this affect the Constitution? Is this a constitutional bill? Is it changing firearm law? So each time you answer yes or no on that thing, it's scoring your answers. And so by the end of that, it creates this thing that says, whoa, this is a big deal. And it's up to 32 points. So if it's plus 32, it's very pro-liberty. And if it's minus 32, it's anti-liberty. And if the Constitution is involved, it's definitely going on the gold standard. So yeah, you would want to go through that bill review training, and you'll be able to clearly kind of see how we rate those bills and what makes them liberty or pro-liberty.
So I'm really glad Jeff sent me this to pull up the gold standard.
But then Jeff can get into the technical pieces of how these bills are worded.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things I love about the gold standard is you guys don't put something in the legislator's box that just says vote this way, vote that way, vote this way, vote that way. You actually give the explanation of this is anti-liberty and here's why, and outline each why. So,
right. So you can see here. I mean, so not everything is a constitutional carry bill. There are small liberties, right? So this was going to be a bill to ban possession of synthetic urine, which I love to carry my synthetic urine around, right? But there's numerous reasons why we're probably doing it. But it's a small thing, right? But that's the kind of thing we would certainly go up against and say and oppose it. And when I give the training, because sometimes I do the training, sometimes it's somebody else does the training. What I always kind of say is like, there's kind of a shortcut, which is if it says like, the government shall not, it's probably going to be good. If it says people shall not, it's probably going to be bad. And really, it's all details after that.
But I mean, this is so cool because one of the reasons I think, this, in my view, the state has basically gotten progressively larger throughout history. And one of the reasons is this sort of like slanted interest, whereas if a special interest or some group wants to get a law passed, there's a lot more momentum behind that than there is behind opposing it. And one of the reasons that the NHLA is so important is this really balances that out. And I didn't mean to take away from that because I would love to keep reading that. I think it's a great example of that, they're looking at in this nuanced way, but it's like, it creates this momentum on the other side. And so even when, someone's coming in with some kind of cronyist bill, there's some industry behind it. Well, now you've got this group on the other side that really cares about not letting it happen.
I think one kind of good example, right? Because it's almost trivially easy to say, well, with taxation and stuff, right? So we got it. So if you're spending more money, it must be anti-liberty. And so people sometimes ask, is there any bill that's going to spend money that you would support, right? Because there might be some bills that spend money we're just going to not take a position on because it's not worth it. But there are bills that will spend more money that we will sometimes support, and that really usually is in the area of government transparency, right? So if it's going to cost, $200K to live stream this state house, or to basically make sure we have access to records, it pains me, right? But you've got you've got to have that transparency so you can see what's going on in the government. So that's probably like the one case where, the most obvious case where we would say, okay, that's a good use of money because you're spending the money to stop them from spending money. But other than that, it tends to be what you might think.
And I'm really glad you brought that example up. That's the ombudsman bill, and that's certainly something that I've been working on with Right to Know. And it was going to be the example that I was going to bring up, where it was one of those, we know with the NHLA, I think abortion is a third rail. We just kind of let that one out there. And with the ombudsman, it almost became that way too. So just for people back home, very briefly, it was basically, we have transparency issues and people were doing a lot of redactions. And so there was this notion, and it actually predated me, so it wasn't something I came up with, but there was this idea that if we started an ombudsman, we'd be growing government, but we would create a body that would allow the ombudsman to look at the transparency issues and start to give us more information faster. At least that's the notion. And what I loved about that bill is because it was so not just divisive in New Hampshire. I actually went and asked a lot of like mucky muck, big head, academic libertarians their thoughts. And honestly, they were all kind of like, I think this is the one where I would let it slide because we're going to win more than we're going to lose, right? Because transparency is such an important issue. But then, for example, someone like Mike Sylvia, who I work with very closely on 100 other bills, won't even talk to me about this right to know issues because it's like, no, we don't agree. You're wrong. You're growing government. So, it's not always 100% clear cut, but here's the thing that we do know. We do know that most, we're principled and at least we're willing to have that conversation. And, in the end, come up with an idea and say, well, we think we're doing this for these reasons. And of course, not everyone's always going to be happy because not everyone likes the same kind of sausage. That sounded dirty.
Not there's anything wrong with that. Yeah, I think one other thing to say, like when people want to get involved with, reviewing bills, I think it's easy to assume, you imagine what bills must look like, right? They're these 100-page things, I have to be a lawyer. And I mean, one thing that's nice in general about New Hampshire is our bills tend to be small, tend to be single topic bills. So like, it's very common for a bill to fit entirely on one page, sometimes in one sentence, right? So there are going to be bills that are giant insurance bills. Maybe Justin loves those. but
I hate them.
But in general, it is actually possible for someone who's basically just passionate about liberty to get involved. Go read. But yeah, here's an example. But even this one looks like it's gonna be really big. But most of this is boilerplate. Like it's the bill name. Here's the people who basically submitted the bill. This is a little summary that the state tells us what the bill is going to do. And it's really only this little piece right here, which is saying that's the part that's in bold italics, which is changing the existing law by adding that and adding one new paragraph. That's a bill, right? You could sit down, you could understand that. Now, you might have to go and read the law around it, understand the bigger context of what it's doing, but it's actually quite possible to go in and review a bill. Some bills I can review in 2 minutes. Some bills might take me 2 hours, right? So it does vary, but you can. That's why people, it's great to be able to do this from home, because if you're sitting down, you have a half hour, go review 2 bills, and if you found a hard one, just skip that one, go to the next one, right?
And you can start small. You don't have to start with the some giant piece of legislation. You can just start small.
They really are very readable. As someone who had never dove into the lawmaking process before coming here, I started reading some of them, and I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, oh, I can understand what this is saying.
Yeah. So I think people have this misunderstanding or fear of what legislation is. So when you talk about asking volunteers to review bills, their first thought is Congress passing an 1,800-page omnibus bill in the middle of the night that no one has read, not even the people voting on it. So it's who are we to review that if the senators and congressmen whose job it is to review it hasn't even done it yet? But there's a bill that's being heard this year that might be one of the most comprehensive health insurance reforms in the past decade anywhere in the country, that'll make New Hampshire one of the freest markets of healthcare in the country. That's a single sentence long, and it's just repeal this. And it's the implications of repealing one sentence in the RSAs cascade to making New Hampshire the freest healthcare in the country.
And I think that's so important. I mean, from a strategic perspective, certainly, because most of the organizations are volunteer driven, we are growing, so we're looking for those those new volunteers. But sometimes it's hard to get ahead of stuff, because we're just trying to review the 1,000 bills, or this is coming up, or whatever. But from a strategic standpoint, I think we're really at the cusp, and this is not FSP hat. This is just New Hampshire Liberty hat. But we can be a lot smarter about how we start to look at these things. Really start to maybe build in as a policy issue, sunset clauses, really go back, start to look at old bills and just go, okay, this is archaic. No one really cares about this anymore.
Repeal. Let's just start repealing. We can start with this, and then, hey, how about 2 next year? Just start repealing it.
Right. And so also for the volunteers, maybe if you guys can talk a little bit about the tech and how GenCourt Mobile came about, and that's sort of a beautiful New Hampshire origin story too. So Jeff?
Sure. Right. So there is a website that we do make use of. It's not where our bill review system is, but it's a site I use pretty much every day while I'm reviewing bills, called GenCourt Mobile. So it was actually made by a volunteer who basically decided that, our state website is pretty good, but it's kind of clunky. There's things that aren't great about it. So he basically made a website that works great on mobile devices, works great on regular devices, and it lets you sign up for alerts whenever a bill changes, or when it goes into whenever it changes state, or if it goes into a certain committee, or if it gets a vote on it, or there's a hearing. So it's a whole great way of basically allowing people to stay involved in the process and make sure things don't slip by. One of my favorite features that he had, which I use every time, is find similar bills. Because one thing it's hard to really remember is the forces of, actually both sides of this, but the forces of anti-liberty are very good at they come back every year, and they do it again and do it again, and maybe they'll wait a year and come back again. So I see a bad bill, I'm like, I think that's familiar. And I go into GenCourt Mobile, and here's the last 12 times they tried that. Here's what the answer was. Here's how it failed. So you can very quickly kind of move through those things. So that's a site we use all the time, and that's really maintained by a single volunteer. Our bill review system itself actually got a pretty significant revamp. I want to say about 4 years ago. Lee had a big role in that, and actually, that's another way people can help. So it might be, maybe reviewing bills isn't your thing, but you're a software engineer, you're a tech kind of person, and you know Django, and Python and Docker and Kubernetes and all those kind of things. We can always use people to go in and improve that bill review system, because it works pretty good. But every time I'm using, I'm like, oh, it'd be better if this was a little bit better. So we've got a backlog of issues there that would be helpful.
I have also heard that the NHLA needs a social media coordinator because
yes, You do.
But we're not offering you a job.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Well, I take different voices with different brands. I will say, there's the right approach for different places. So you guys know more about what's coming down the pipeline than anyone. My vague but non-specific impression is that we've got a lot of great stuff coming up in 2022. Could you guys talk about that a little bit? What's coming down the pipeline for New Hampshire that might pass?
Sure. Well, you want to.
You can just talk about the good stuff, whether it passes. I don't know. Whatever. You can give your.
Actually, the first thing we have to do is there is a little bit of leftover stuff from 2021. So there's about 89 bills that were retained in committee from last year. They're all going to get voted on that first week in January. So there's a lot there, and I went through and looked, and I know we're not, there's not a lot bad, but there's one. So here's one we might oppose. Like, they want to have notification for, that if you're going to rent, that rental insurance isn't covered, right? So that's the kind of stuff we got to do. We got to stop that, because I don't want to be mandated to have to tell people that. So it's a small bad thing. But in terms of the good things in that, there's a legal cannabis bill that I think probably won't pass the House, because there's a whole bunch of those that are coming up in the 2022 year, and I think they like some of those better, but it could. There's a grow your own plants one, which is not too bad. One which I hope it passes. It probably has an equal chance, which is so right now in New Hampshire, if they want to have a sobriety checkpoint, is what they call them, or I would call them a warrantless stop. The police are required to actually post a notice and tell everybody, hey, on Thursday night at 7 p.m. over here, we're gonna do this suspicionless checkpoint. One thing we were trying to get added is if the feds are going to set up like an immigration checkpoint, 100 miles in on 93, and they have any way in which they're interacting with the state agencies, we're going to require them to sort of notify of that too, right? So I think there's sometimes there's not good roads to go around it, but it'd be nice to kind of know that they're there, so you can either avoid it or maybe keep going through a bunch of times.
Wait a day.
Keep going through a bunch of times to have fun with it. Actually, one I think you guys talked with Kate Baker about is that local option on education freedom account. That's a big one, which will be really interesting, right? We basically passed like a school choice bill, but the way that the existing one works is, parents can basically get a portion of the money that was going to be used for their child in a public school that comes from the state, but the bulk of the money comes from local, from local towns. So this is going to give local school districts the ability to opt in to have that local money or 80% of that local money follow the student as well. That's going to be a tough one, but it'll be great to get through. This one, again, not huge, but it'd be kind of interesting. So one thing that's kind of annoying right now is when you go to vote, it's considered electioneering if you're wearing anything that could be kind of seen as political. I can understand like not wanting the people who are like running the voting machines and signing you in to be overtly political. But if I want to go in with a gold colored shirt on at the Libertarian Party, which they won't recognize, I want to be able to go in that way, right? So we're going to try to get that repealed. That's probably got a little bit less than 50-50 chance, but it could go through. And the one I think I'm probably the most excited about in terms of the holdover bills is HB 275, which is not perfect, but it's a pretty good reform of the governor's emergency powers. Right now, the governor can basically declare a state of emergency. It lasts for 21 days, and then he can renew it, and he can renew it. He basically can indefinitely renew it if he wants to. And it's certainly possible for the legislature to come together and vote to terminate it, but that's like it takes a positive action of the legislature to do that. So what's actually going to be changing is it's still going to be 21 days, but the governor will only be able to renew it, I think, 3 times. So it's once in the original one, 3 times, and then after that, the legislature has to basically step in and go on record. More importantly, though, because I think this is the one that really would have been helpful last time, is right now they can basically terminate the state of emergency, but that's like they can kind of go all or nothing. But we're going to give them the power to be able to line out an individual emergency order. So if there's one emergency order that's particularly bad, they can basically terminate that one too. So that actually, it sounds pretty. In some ways it sounds small. In some ways it probably sounds quite aggressive. I think it actually has a pretty good chance of passing, or at least I'm hopeful that it might pass. And then we'll go into 2022. So again, small bill, but you can kind of see why people worry about it. This bill to make it so you can guarantee that you can cultivate vegetables in your property. I have not seen any kind of like cases in New Hampshire where people are being stopped from growing vegetables on their property. That's probably the biggest hindrance to this bill. Is like a lot of times we're very afraid sometimes in New Hampshire to pass a bill to fix something we don't have any evidence that it's broken, right? And you can kind of see why you really want to clutter up the laws. And so, maybe there is somebody who's had this happen to them. And, if this passes, I'm going to make Mellissa mad because I'm going to grow my vegetable garden in the front yard instead of the backyard. And she'll probably this one.
But if it's liberty, I can't deny it.
And it's a great example of what I call these micro liberties, where it's like there's someone out there who's like, look, I don't care if the law against growing your tomatoes in your front yard isn't enforced. I don't like that it's a law in the books. Get rid of it. And I just love that attitude. And I think it's so good to have that kind of perspective.
And there's another pretty good improvement to our civil asset forfeiture laws, right? So we actually made some pretty good progress on that too. Mike Sylvia, who you talked about earlier, has been in front of that for years. So it is now the case in New Hampshire that for at least the state type things, right, you have to be convicted of a crime. It used to be they could basically seize your assets and never even charge you for a crime. But we've largely fixed that, except for the feds. Another bill he's put in this time is, so let's say you get convicted and they decide that they're going to seize your drugs. Well, right now, the money that was in the room is kind of presumed guilty. Like once you're guilty, the money is presumed guilty. So there's a bill to kind of change that to say, just because it's in proximity doesn't mean it's necessarily, you don't have to prove your money innocent. Let's put it that way, right? So it basically it makes the property be presumed innocent as well, so that if you have a guest staying at your house and something happens and they get arrested, and convicted, the money was in the room isn't necessarily considered to be guilty. That's a pretty good one. Actually, here another small one that I didn't even ask for this one, but it reminds me of there's something I really wanted a couple of years ago I didn't get, and maybe this is why. So in New Hampshire, theoretically, municipalities they can't do anything unless the state tells them they can do it, right? So that's we're not a home rule state, which has got a lot good about it. So one thing that they might not be able to do right now is accept donations for certain things, so voluntary funding of projects. And so there was one time 2 years ago, I was actually out running through the Mine Falls, which is this great park in downtown Nashua, and they had just redone the place where I run, it was I don't know, repaved or something. It was gorgeous. It was my money. They stole the money and stuff. But I was like, wow, I really appreciate that they did them. So I reached out to my alderman. I'm like, hey, can you put a Bitcoin QR code on the outside of the park so I can donate, because I use this park. I think I should be paying for the park. And he kind of looked at it and he didn't think he could do it. But so there's a bill here that again I didn't ask for, but it's going to basically allow towns to basically accept voluntary donations for things. So basically reduce taxes and basically move towards the direction of society that we want. So I could go on, but that's a pretty good smattering of them.
Well, you're going on about the little things, and Jeremy's point, the micro liberties are incredibly important to a lot of people, and you're the bills that are most exciting you aren't even the big ones,
right?
Like secession or the multiple bipartisan bills to finally legalize cannabis in New Hampshire, or the bill to get rid of vehicle inspections. Those are the ones that excite me.
Right. Yeah. Well, actually, and there's a bill to legalize mushrooms, right? So the magic mushrooms.
The harvesting of them?
No, that's the harvesting wild mushrooms.
Oh,
edible.
okay. Sorry.
This is actually.
Therapeutic psilocybin.
Yeah, therapeutic. There you go.
There's also a bill to there's some anti-federal bills both around OSHA and gun rights, is my understanding. You would know better than me.
Yeah, so the gun rights one is HB 1178, which is basically to basically make it so the state and basically any subdivision of the state basically can't in any way cooperate with the enforcement of a federal gun law. Unless it's also a state gun law. So, so some people interpret that as, hey, does that mean I can have, machine guns made in New Hampshire? Well, I'm like, kind of, but although it doesn't, if the feds come and get you, this doesn't say we have to arrest them. It just says we won't help, right? So I'm not sure I'd go there, but it's a good.
But we've seen both with marijuana and sanctuary cities that federal government is reluctant to violate state laws.
Yep. And actually, there's another good one. This is probably sort of more of a medium-sized one to allow people to record interactions with public officials. Right. So I mean, obviously, Carla knows this pretty well. We're pretty good on the police side, but it's a little bit unclear. Can I walk into the zoning board and record that in a public area or not? So there's there's been sometimes people do it, sometimes they don't. They get pushed back. So that bill is HB 1175. So that's a pretty decent one as well. And then there's a whole bunch of good cannabis ones. One which I think is interesting. It's actually a constitutional amendment for it, because the idea behind that is, well, we don't need the governor to sign it. So really, we just need to pass the House and the Senate, which again is no easy feat. And then it has to be ratified. It'll show up on the ballot, and I'm pretty sure if it showed up on the ballot, we probably pass, right? So
it's far past time for that to pass. We are the island of prohibition.
Yeah.
And I think
although in the Cato rankings, I'm not trying to defend our status quo. We're actually like 14th on cannabis freedom. Like it's obviously not perfect. Far from, well, no state has it perfect. Let's be honest.
Texas.
Like a lot of them are cronyist handouts, even the states that have it better. But like, it's not like New Hampshire's bad on marijuana. And also, you have a network of 10,000 libertarians who like agorism. I'm going to be honest. It's not a bad scene for cannabis if that's what you're into. Can't get into the specifics on this show, but if you come for a visit, I don't think you'll be disappointed by the quality of service.
Yeah, I actually saw today that California had to, they have to drop their taxes because the drug dealers are just outpricing them in the market, and it's gotten so out of whack. I mean, that they were like, yeah, we're going to have to drop our taxes on our cannabis because even we understand some basic economics.
And I mean, that's the thing too. One thing which we talked about earlier, no matter how good we get, there'll always be work to do, and there'll always be people who say, well, I would come accept, right? So, you legalize cannabis, but your tax on it is 7.2%, and then if it was 4.8%, I'd be there, right? So there's always work to do. There's always places we can do better. Even the window tint law, right? That is a great one. Again, small one. I don't even tint my windows, but when people talk about it, I'm like, no, we fixed that. We're like, well, yeah, but you can only has to be 70% transmissive. I'm like, well, okay, next year we'll get it a little bit better, right? Just keep going.
Did I hear they're bringing the seatback law back? Do they do that every year, right? The bastards never give up.
I don't know that I've seen that one. Yeah, but it might be in there. That does come back all the time. I mean, obviously, right, there was, years ago, I forget the state rep there who wanted, she hates the free staters and wants to get rid of all of our liberties. So people come, so there are people who really feel that way. And sometimes I think like we make the job too easy for the staters because they're like, I don't know how I feel about, well, the NH likes it, so I must vote the other way. Right? There's some people who vote so perfectly wrong, I almost think they have to be.
To be clear,
Never thought about that. Yeah.
We have a bigger number of really pro-liberty people in our legislature, but the constitutional threats are growing a bit too. So the divide is occurring at the State House. We do see that at the NHL.
And that's a national trend, though, too.
Yeah.
And it's also, one reason it makes it kind of hard to compare things year over year too is that, our standards have raised over the years too. And some people will argue the other way, but, we certainly rate more bills, we make more recommendations than we have like in the early years, right? So there's more opportunity to get it wrong basically than there used to be.
Well, my favorite part is you guys don't identify as free staters. You're pre-staters. You were here before the Free State Project picked New Hampshire. And a big part of the reason the Free State Project picked New Hampshire was because people like you already embodied the culture of liberty and freedom here in New Hampshire. We like to brag all the time about 40 some odd free staters being in the state house, but you guys have graded over 100 state reps as pro-libertarian in the state house, which means those are natives who already embrace these values.
Yeah, actually, people sometimes talk about like how do the natives feel about it, right? And it's like anything else, right? So if you like freedom, you're going to like it, right? But I'll go there, right? So we were at an event this weekend right over near Keene, and it was all people like we didn't really know before. And so we were talking about the NH label. We talked about the Free State Project too. And I'm like, I'm in Keene. Let's all say Free State Project. And only like one person had ever heard of it, right? So that's so people worry about. Most people just don't know. And of course, when they heard about it, they're like, oh my God, that's awesome. Right?
They hadn't heard of the NHLA either. Yeah. And so it was a lovely event out in Swansea, New Hampshire. And I was just like, oh my gosh, there's a whole group of people. It was so much fun. And we just made friends. And that's the nice thing too about New Hampshire is that it was only an hour and a half away. And we were able to make new friends in another part of the state. And I'm like, some of them have already joined the NHLA just from that one event. And that's beautiful. So I can go from here in an hour and be at my state house to testify on a bill, to tell my reps how I feel. I can be out in Swansea in an hour and a half to make new friends. I do like this New Hampshire.
I know we're wrapping up, but I've got one very short story on this, which is there's a state rep. I believe he got either a 97% or a 100% from the NHLA. I met him because he was interested in my work. So he contacted me. He said, I'm in New Hampshire. I'm interested in what you're doing. And he said, and he ran for office independently. He's not a free stater. I don't think he necessarily even identified as a libertarian, but he's like a liberty guy. He was frustrated by what was going on. I said, you got to meet the NHLA. You got to meet these people. And he got completely plugged into the Liberty Rep network. And then he voted the libertarian way, nearly 100% of the time. And it's a great case study of a kind of person who, he might have only voted the Liberty way 85% of the time if he hadn't been plugged into the culture of people who are thinking this way. And that's part of the way that this difference happens, is because there's a lot of reps who aren't, they're not these philosophical types necessarily, and organizations like the NHLA are making a big impact on them.
And actually, maybe if you guys can mention, Liberty Prom and the ratings and sort of how that works, because I think that to Jeremy's point, the legislators, it's a point of pride.
Yeah, so what happens is once we score all our legislators on, how they voted, and we get them from A+ to constitutional threat, at the end of the season, we have what's called Liberty Dinner, or the nickname around here is Liberty Prom. And so we do create this thing. It's called the Liberty Rating. And at Liberty Dinner in July, usually mid-July, we unveil the Liberty Rating, and we hand out the Liberty Rating to show everyone, including the legislators, how they did. And so right here, we're seeing that Michael, I cannot pronounce his name. He was our legislator of the year. And so he was scored, by his votes in the gold standard. He, made all the votes. He voted with the gold standard 100% of the time. He sponsored pro-liberty bills through the State House. Not only did he sponsor bills, he saw that they got through and, made their way into law. And so now he was the legislator of the year. So we award a legislator of the year. We award an activist of the year. That this year was the lady who was on last week, Kate Baker. And then we unveil the Liberty Rating. And so we hand that out. And it's just so funny to me because the legislators at Liberty Dinner, they can't wait to get the Liberty Rating to see how they did. And we're just like, well, you should know it's an open book test.
Yeah.
How do you not know? But they want to see it in writing, and they seem to enjoy it. And then, we endorse them, and,
One of my favorite libertarian arguments of all time was at a Liberty Prom a few years back when it came out, and I was sitting next to a state rep for dinner, and he opened it and saw he had a 98 instead of a 99. He's like, well, I knew I missed one vote that would hurt me, but and started debating people about what the actual libertarian answer to the petition and there was disagreement.
Yeah.
So, but that's how the sausage is made, by people doing the work, you guys getting involved. Everybody watching, if you want to get involved or learn more, again, follow them on Twitter at NH Liberty. Check out their website, nhliberty.org. And if you want to join and help and volunteer, nhliberty.org/join, or give an email to research@nhliberty.org to get plugged into how you can help. But wrapping up for the night, roundtable, let's go around the plugs. If you are not in New Hampshire yet, plan your visit. There's a lot of reasons to visit, a lot of reasons to come. You can visit fsp.org/visit New Hampshire to get plugged in with resources to help plan your trip, meet people, get plugged into the community, and see how you can help and how you can get here. Check out fsp.org/calendar if you're in the state or visiting the state to find Liberty events every day, all over the state, including the Liberty Dinners in Nashua, to New Movers parties in Manchester, where you can get plugged into the community and meet the people who are trying to get stuff done. Coming up this weekend on that calendar, it's already sold out from what I hear. The sample, the Seacoast, we'll go to seacoastwelcome.org to see what they're doing with their great events to get free staters into the New Hampshire at Sample the Seacoast. It might be a little late for you, but definitely worth looking into seeing what they're doing. And then we got upcoming events that you're not too late to get involved with. The longest running cryptocurrency meetup in the world, never canceled, is scheduling their 500th consecutive weekly meetup for February 6th. You go to freestatecrypto.com. You can purchase tickets to get in. It's going to be an amazing time. You can only buy tickets with cryptocurrency. That's the best part. And all the waitresses at the restaurant are being set up with their own crypto wallets to take tips in crypto, and the restaurant's taking crypto for all orders. It's going to be fantastic, awesome day. And soon after that, the first weekend of March, we have Liberty Forum, the biggest non-Pork Fest event of the year. Everyone gets together. We got speakers coming from all over the country, people coming from all over the country for their first chance to visit New Hampshire to see what we're all about. We have a
NHLA
legislative
just
panel.
bought their Liberty table.
We'll be an exhibitor.
We're gonna
So you can come
if you liked this episode, Liberty Forum is the event for you.
Yes.
You must be at Liberty Forum if you liked this episode. And keep in touch with what we're doing. Keep in touch with future shows. Follow us on Twitter at FreeStateNH. Hit subscribe, like on this channel, on Odyssey, everywhere else you can listen to podcasts and find us. Jeff and Melissa, where can people follow you guys? Just on Twitter or just on the email?
Me nowhere.
You nowhere?
She's around. You can find her on Signal, maybe.
I am the chair of the NHLA. So on the website, if you email the chair, that is me. So that's how you can find me. But if you really want to find us on social media, it's this guy.
Or check out NashvilleLiberty.com. That's our Nashville Liberty page for our local Nashville Liberty meetup group.
And Nashville Liberty is exceptional. I'll speak highly to that. When I first moved to New Hampshire, I had no clue what I was doing. I was just running away from Massachusetts, and Jeff and Melissa were the first people I met and started bringing me around to the Nashville Liberty meetup and introduced me to all these awesome Free Staters that I know all the time now. Carla, where can everybody follow you?
You can find me at carlagarrick.com, and from there, and I just want to remind everyone, new movers tomorrow night. It was a busy weekend again in the state. It is bananas. Come visit. And also there's a ski thing that's happening where you can like cross country ski in the North Country. It's not a Free State thing, but it sounds fun, and you can cross country ski and you get chocolate. And so look for skiing and chocolate if you just want to come sometime in the next month.
Jeremy.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm going to take my time, just say, like, I love that, like, Jeff and Melissa are like, oh, yeah, we're not online. Like, it's just like the class, like, you get these libertarian people who, like, they're like libertarian celebrities. And they're like, follow me. I have a great podcast. And what do they fucking accomplish? I don't know if I'm allowed to say. They don't accomplish anything. And then you got people like Jeff and Melissa who have done more for liberty. They are on the short list. They've done so much for liberty, and they're like, we don't care if anyone knows who we are, you know. And I just think like that it's a very New Hampshire thing. I mean, there's no one like Jeff or Melissa, but you've got people like that here in the sense that they just want to do the work, and it's so cool, and it's a huge part of why we're winning. So if you like what I just said, I don't know, you can follow me on Twitter, but really what you should be doing is get on the NHLA newsletter, become an NHLA member, and get in the NHLA forums. I think that's what you should really be doing if you like this episode.
Absolutely. And if you want to keep up with me, follow me on Twitter at O'Donnell4NH. Holdover from what I used to think running for office was what I was good at. Turns out it's not. But I do host the O'Donnell for Liberty podcast twice a week. This Wednesday, I've got an interesting Free State related topic. I've got Jason Sorens, the founder of the Free State Project, coming on to talk about why libertarian condensation in one place is the best path to liberty. So I'm looking forward to it. You guys should tune in for that, and tune in next week right here at the same time every week. Looking forward to it. And until next time, be free.
Peace out, guys.
A nice place to fight in the summer.